Good evening. You are now watching the main news on HKIBC. I am Chloe Feng. Our top stories tonight. A hiker dies from heat stroke as temperatures across Hong Kong shoot up. An 18-month toddler is in serious condition as fears rise over more children contracting COVID. And the construction method for quarantine facilities may be used to speed up public housing supply. A hiker has died after suffering a heat stroke as the city baked under a heat wave. Shanshui sweated out, with the temperature there shooting up to 38.2 degrees Celsius. Macy Mock reports.
The observatory said today was the hottest so-called Great Heat Day based on the lunar calendar. At the weather forecaster's office in Tsim Sha Tsui, the mercury jumped to 34.9 degrees Celsius. The previous record of 34.7 degrees was set in 1972. But it was much hotter elsewhere, with Shanshui recording a maximum temperature of 38.2 degrees. The observatory issued the very hot weather warning signal at 1:45 p.m.
Under the dominance of the subtropical ridge, the weather is fine and persistently very hot over southern China. So under the influence of prolonged heat, members of the public should stay on the alert to prevent potential heat stroke.
In Repulse Bay, the blazing sun pushed the mercury there to 37 degrees this afternoon. Many went to the beach but brought their tents to block the sun. This woman said she doesn't usually take her tent, but made an exception today. Children took a dip in the ocean to cool off. But this man who went for a swim said even the water felt hot. The heat wave claimed one life. A man who went hiking in Sai Kung suffered a heat stroke. He was unconscious when he was airlifted to hospital by helicopter and later died. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
The number of new COVID cases in Hong Kong has remained about 4,000 as fears grow over the number of children contracting the virus. Almost 1,300 COVID patients are now in hospital, adding to the pressure on the city's healthcare system. Hong Kong's daily COVID caseload has continued to climb, with another 4,265 infections, including 231 imported cases. It was the third consecutive day with cases about 4,000. Health officials said another 168 COVID patients were admitted to hospital, with the admission tally now at 1,275. Pressure is weighing on hospital capacity. 5 patients are in intensive care and 26 are in critical condition. An 18-month-old girl is said to be in serious condition. The toddler was admitted to Queen Elizabeth's Hospital on Wednesday. Her condition worsened and she developed breathing difficulties. The hospital authorities' Larry Lee said occupancy in Queen Elizabeth's pediatric ward now stands at 48%. This morning, government pandemic advisor Lau Yulong urged parents to get their children vaccinated as the number of young COVID patients increases. University of Hong Kong pediatrics expert Mike Kwan said about 10% of children who contracted the virus had developed long COVID symptoms, including eczema. About 70% of children between 3 and 11 years old have been vaccinated, and the authorities are studying whether those under 3 years old should also get jabs. Chuang Shu-Kwan of the Center for Health Protection urged the public, especially the elderly, to be triple jabbed. Another 7 people died from COVID. A 94-year-old man, also suffering from dementia and asthma, succumbed to the virus at his home after testing positive earlier this month. Casinos in Macau reopened at midnight last night as the gambling hub eased its stringent COVID curbs. Some eager punters waited at the lobby of the Grand Lisboa before its gambling hall opened after being shut for 12 days. Visitors must prove that they are COVID-free and have taken the required tests. Non-essential industrial and commercial businesses also reopened as an outbreak eased. In another development, Philippine passport holders were ordered to take PCR tests daily, although they account for only a small number of cases. The move sparked an outcry and accusations of discrimination. The government is considering how to speed up the supply of public housing. The method used to build temporary quarantine facilities may be adopted. Here's Macy Mock again.
Secretary for Housing Winnie Ho witnessed the speedy construction of temporary quarantine camps in Lei Yun Mun Park 2 years ago and cabin hospitals during the recent fifth COVID wave. That inspired her to explore the possibility of using the modular integrated construction method to speed up the provision of public housing.
If the sites are too small and too congested, or if the site is on a slope or in front of a very narrow road, there are restrictions and constraints. So to make use of the greatest benefit of this method, we have to choose sites that are substantially larger sites. That's the choices between the traditional and conventional construction method and this modular integration method. So we have to decide by site and case by case.
Ho said small-scale public housing units will continue to be built for people who want lower-priced homes, but the number of such flats will be reduced. In December, the Development Bureau said flats built on government land should not be less than 280 square feet.
盼望房子住得更宽敞一些。
Ho's words echoed the aims of President Xi Jinping, which he announced in a speech on July the 1st, when she was sworn in as housing chief. Xi said government policies should benefit ordinary citizens, noting that Hong Kongers hope to live in a bigger house. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
The maiden flight of Greater Bay Airlines has arrived in the Thai capital, Bangkok. The plane took off from Hong Kong at around 10:30 a.m., but few passengers were seen registering at its counter. The carrier declined to reveal the number of passengers, citing the impact of COVID on aviation. Greater Bay Airlines will fly to Bangkok every Wednesday and Saturday before adding more destinations. It says the Hong Kong government has approved 100 routes, and it is waiting for aviation authorities overseas to respond. Russia and Ukraine have signed an agreement that allows for the resumption of grain exports from Black Sea ports. The deal between the enemies were brokered by the United Nations and Turkey, Sachin Ketvi reports.
As Russia's invasion of Ukraine enters its 6th month, representatives of the two countries met in Istanbul to sign separate agreements with Turkey and the United Nations. That paves the way for the export of millions of tons of grain stranded in the Black Sea ports because of the war. The breakthrough was witnessed by United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. If Russia and Ukraine stick to the deal, it could ease a global food shortage and bring down prices.
Today, there is a beacon on the Black Sea, a beacon of hope, a beacon of possibility. It will bring relief for developing countries on the edge of bankruptcy and the most vulnerable people on the edge of famine.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said he hopes efforts will be made to implement the agreement. He said Western claims that Moscow was responsible for the food shortage were false, adding that it was Ukraine that blocked the previous attempts to export the grain. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky continued to blame Russia for endangering global food security, but said the deal has eased concerns over food supplies. Sachin Katwi, HKIBC.
Steve Bannon, an ally of former U.S. President Donald Trump, has been found guilty of contempt for defying a congressional order from a panel investigating the riots at the Capitol on January the 6th last year.
We may have lost a battle here today, but we're not going to lose this war, okay? One disappointment, and that is the gutless members of that show trial committee, the J6 committee, didn't have the guts to come down here and testify in open court. Thank you very much.
Bannon faces 2 years in jail and a fine of $200,000 US. But he says his lawyer has what he calls a bulletproof appeal. The former White House chief strategist is believed to have been advising Trump at the time of the insurrection. Witnesses have told the investigation panel that the former president did nothing for 3 hours when his loyalists stormed Congress. As Hong Kong sweltered on Great Heat Day, many other parts of the world also sweated, with prolonged heat waves blamed for deaths and fires. In the U.S. state of California, firemen evacuated people from their homes near Fresno after they were trapped by a fast-spreading blaze. The wildfire destroyed 650 hectares of forest land in Mariposa County in a few hours. Roads were closed as the blaze reached the Seria National Forest. It's the third wildfire in Mariposa County in just 2 weeks. And locally, there's no respite from the heat. Temperatures tomorrow will range between 29 and 35 degrees. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Saturday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Chloe Feng. Good evening.